Okay, guys, we're at it again. And again, as a reminder, we're reading from Gods of the Bible. We started off on chapter 7, the giants. And now we are starting again on page 121, David and Goliath. I always like to show the page. Can you guys see? David and Goliath. All right, here we go. The first book of Samuel contains a story that everyone knows, one of the most famous anecdotes in religious literature, the story of David and Goliath. The text recounts one of the many confrontations that Israelites and Philistines had in the struggle for control over the territory of Canaan. We read 1 Samuel 17, 1 through 11, that the Philistines and Saul went to battle against the Israelites, and the Philistine Goliath of Gath terrified the Hebrews by repeatedly challenging them to single combat. After 40 days, the young shepherd David accepted the challenge and defeated his adversary. First, he struck him down with a stone from a slingshot and then decapitated him with the Philistine's sword. This Goliath of Gath was able to spread terror, for 1 Samuel 17:4, and here's the Hebrew to English. It says, height his 6 cubits and 1 palm. He was almost 9 feet tall. His powerful armor matched his size. He wore a bronze helmet and plate armor that weighed 5,000 shekels of bronze. Shin guards protected his legs, and he was armed with a bronze spear. The blade weighed 600 shekels of iron. 1 Samuel 17, 4 through 7. The shekels weight varied from 0.3 to 0.4 ounces, so the armor weighed about 110 pounds and the blade of the spear 13 pounds. Was he a giant? We know that he belonged to one of the peoples who lived in the territories to be conquered, such as the Rephaim and Ammon and the Anakim, all descendants of Nephilim. We have, therefore, various biblical accounts that tell us of people with extraordinary physical features who belonged to a race whose presence aroused fear and terror. Excavations on the banks of Jordan and, in general, in the areas where the events described took place have shown that these areas were dominated, at least since 4th millennium BCE, by strong peoples who produced megalithic civilization capable of erecting cyclopean structures. Just think of the incredible site of Baalbek in the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, where monoliths weighing hundreds of tons each were moved. Archaeology documents that new inhabitants gradually replaced these people. The Anakim, men with long necks, inhabited the area of Hebron and the region that the tribe of Judah would later conquer. 3 leaders are mentioned: Anhamine, Sheashai, and Talmai, whose names are of Aramaic origin. They were defeated by Caleb when the city of Hebron surrendered to him. Subsequently, Joshua destroyed them, and they only survived in the territory of Gaza, Ashdod, and Gath, the city of the giant Goliath, perhaps not by chance. The Rephaim, to whom Og belonged, occupied Transjordan from Mount Hermon to Ammon, like the Anakim. They were defeated by Joshua amid the wars of conquest, although David still clashed with some of them who lived on the west bank, 2 Samuel 21:15 through 21. They were also present in Gilead and were exterminated by the Amorites. The etymology of Rephaim is uncertain. For some, the term refers to the concept of healing contained in the root Rapha, and the hypothesis is quite realistic, that the Anunnaki Elohim were endowed with special medical knowledge is a fundamental part of the whole framework on which the idea of their genetic engineering ability is based. The Zazumim also belonged to the group of Rephaim. They lived in the region of Ammon, Transjordan, and were defeated by the Amorites, who took possession of their territory. It is also said of them that they were people of high stature, like the Anakim, Deuteronomy 2:20 through 23. The Emin eventually dwelt in the territory of Moab, east-southeast of the Dead Sea, and the Moabites named them since they were otherwise known as Rephaim. According to Genesis 14:5, they were defeated by the king of Elam and his allies. Their city was destroyed and then rebuilt by the Israelite tribe of Reuben, Numbers 32:37. Traces of these people's names are also found in a geographical reference, the Valley of Rephaim, identified with the plain of El Bequa, southwest of Jerusalem. Since we wish to deal only with the Bible, we avoid going into all the evidence furnished by the finds of skeletons, skeletal parts, or footprints of gigantic individuals more than 10 feet in height in various parts of the world: Mesopotamia, Garganyan, Philippines, Ceylon, China, West Pakistan, Java, Tibet, South Africa, Southeast Australia, North Central and South America, California, Aleutian Islands, Morocco, Caucasus, Glozelle, France, Lucerne, Switzerland, Northern Europe, Sardinia, Italy. Some archaeological findings match the size of Goliath's weapons. In Morocco, tools were found that could only be used by people with height of at least 13 feet. In China, 500 two-handed axes weighing 18 pounds each were excavated. In his histories, even the historian Herodotus tells of the discovery of a giant about 10 feet tall. From numerous sources and from all over the world, the evidence seems to emerge, for the unbiased freethinker, of the existence of an ancient race of giants, to which we would like to add a curiosity of great interest. During the time of King David, the Philistines were fighting numerous battles against Israel. In one of these battles, there were present, besides Goliath, the giant whom we have spoken of, 4 Rephaim from the city of Gath, and another man of great stature. He is described as follows. This is in 2 Samuel 21:20. And again, here's the Hebrew words with the English translation underneath it. And there was man of Madon, great stature, and the fingers of his hands and fingers of his feet, 6 and 6, 20 and 4 number. The author is very precise in communicating the particularity that identified this giant. He had 6 fingers on each limb, 24 digits in all. The presence of this hexadactyl individual and his family background are confirmed with the same thoroughness in 1 Corinthians 26, where it is stated that there was a Hebrew, English translation again. Man of stature, very tall, and his fingers and 6 and 6. Again, we have a giant with 24 fingers. The next subtitle is calling the meaning of the term Nephilim. The Bible says that the Nephilim were the famous men of antiquity, famous Hebrews, Genesis 6:4. All the traditions and lore of the world speak of these famous heroes. The Greeks have the myth of Hercules. The Sumerians tell the stories of Gilgamesh, etc. The Bible thus turns out to be one of the many texts written by humanity that tell essentially the same stories. The Septuagint, the Greek Bible, translated the word Nephilim with, there's another Hebrew word there, but it translates as giants. In Hebrew extra-biblical literature, particularly in the so-called Book of Jubilees, these giants were children born from the sexual encounters between the Elohim and the Adamite females. The Romanized Jewish writer Flavius Josephus reports that the angels of God united with women and gave birth to ungodly children who were proud and arrogant and only trusted in their strength. At the beginning of this chapter, we ask ourselves whether these giants were present on earth before the interbreeding of the Watchers with the Adamite female, or were they the consequence of those encounters? This is Genesis 6:4. The Nephilim giants were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of the Elohim went to the daughters of the Adam. The parenthetical insert of Genesis 6:4 and also afterward seems to add confusion to the origin of the word Nephilim, but we can find some hints by looking at the word's etymology. The word Nephilim probably derives from the root of the verb naphal, which means to fall, to come down. If this is so, Genesis 6:4, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward, might be read more appropriately. At the time on the earth there were those who had fallen come down. We know, however, that there is a significant difference between to fall and to come down. The verb to come down conveys intention, which is not present in the act of falling. Professor Michael Heiser of Wisconsin-Madison University argues that the word Nephilim does not derive from Nephal because its vocalization differs from the usual derivations of this root, and consequently, the intention inherent in descending cannot be attributed to it. Instead, he asserts that the correct reading could only indicate a masculine plural noun or a masculine plural active participle. In the latter case, it would still have been vocalized differently and thus read Nophlim. Heiser also points out that Hebrew always refers to the act of descending with the verb yarad. According to Ronald S. Hindell, professor of Hebrew Bible and Jewish Studies at the University of California, the use of the verb nafal with the meaning of to fall is present elsewhere in the Bible. Thus, Nephilim represents the quato form of the verb, which can be seen as the adjectival passage of the root nafal, with the meaning of to fall. In short, this would be a kind of conjugated adjective. The scholar quotes a passage from Ezekiel 32 in which the verb nafal indicates a voluntary descent by warriors. In conclusion, It does not seem a stretch of the imagination to think that Nephilim, similarly to the verb yarad, has both the meaning of involuntary falling and deliberate descent. To diatribe, however, remains unresolved. So we end here the physiological disquisition and proceed with our discussion by introducing elements from the Aramaic language and the Greek world. The Greeks did not care about establishing whether the term Nephilim contained the meaning of an involuntary fall or a voluntary descent. They translated the term Nephilim as the Hebrew word, which I can't pronounce, giants. In the Septuagint, Genesis 6:4, we read, "The giants were on the earth in those days and after that." The Greeks called the Nephilim giants with a peremptory choice devoid of interpretive nuances. This choice, however, raises another question. Why did Nephilim mean giants to the Greeks? It must be known that the Aramaic language, the word Nephalia, is a proper name for a constellation of Orion. In Greek mythology, Orion was a giant from Boeotia and the son of Poseidon. Orion was a great hunter and always went out with his dog, Sirius, which corresponds to the giant star Canis Majoris. This star accompanies Orion's journey in the celestial sphere. It is very bright and visible under Safe Kappa Uranus. In love with the Pleiades, Orion began to chase them. So the goddess Artemis, who had in turn fallen in love with him, had him killed by a scorpion. When Zeus discovered what had happened, he became angry, struck the scorpion down, and decided to place Orion in the sky. Since then, Orion's constellation shines in the night in his continual attempt to reach the Pleiades, a group of stars in the constellation Taurus, who preceded him in the celestial path. Numerous other studies correlate the constellation of Orion with the birth of human civilization. In a range of hypotheses formulated by authors such as E. von Däniken, G. Hancock, R. Bovall, B. Fagan, and A. Collins, the constellation of Orion is identified as a possible place of origin of the extraterrestrials who descended on our planet. According to these theories, Orion's origin and importance for humanity are recorded in numerous architectural artifacts on sites considered sacred by various ancient populations from different continents. The most well-known example is the Gizon Plain, where the spatial arrangement of the three great pyramids is said to reflect the orientation of the three stars of Orion's belt. But we could also mention the Mayan pyramids of Teotihuacan, Mexico, and the constructions on the mesa of the Hopi Indians in Arizona. We must, of course, remember that there are currently no certainties. We do not enter here into the discussion of the reliability of these hypotheses. Still, we must note the striking coincidence between apparently separate elements, which we limit ourselves to describing as a mere curiosity for the time being. At any rate, Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek mythology intersect here, providing a possibility of interpretation of Nephilim that integrates various meanings. Orion was, for the Greeks, a giant of colossal dimensions. In Aramaic, there's the term Nephalia, which identifies the figure and constellation of Orion. The Aramaic term Nephalia, when taking the Hebrew termination of the masculine plural, becomes Nephilim. The Greeks translated Nephilim as giants. If the translation of the singular Nephalia is Orion, the translation of the plural could be Orions, Oronias, Oroniites. Was this what the biblical author was referring to, Oronians? Did the Greeks understand this? By calling them giants, was it their intention to identify their connection with the giant Orion and the celestial site from where they may have come? Did the Greeks know more, or did they know something different? This question is legitimized by the knowledge of the scholars who produced the Greek version of the Bible, the so-called Septuagint, used an original text that differed from the Masoretic text. We have no specific answers to these questions. For the time being, the hypothetical summary reported here has the connotations of mere curiosity and therefore no claim to truth. Still, the coincidences are stimulating. In the field where fluidity is the main feature, any conjecture with the minimal of foundation can prove helpful because it stimulates supporters and detractors equally committed to verifying, disproving, or confirming it. In any case, the unfettered advancement of knowledge always benefits. Wow. Through every culture, there has been reports of giants and stories, and even like Poseidon and what they call Greek mythology wasn't mythology at all. They were really giants. And one thing that it didn't mention here in Missouri, they found, I think in the 1900s or in the 1900s, early 1900s, they discovered giant bones in Missouri. They called them the mound builders. That wasn't here in the book, but look that up. There were giants in Missouri too. How about that? All right, we're going to stop here, and we're going to begin again on page 129, the birth of monotheism. Show you guys that page. So I'll see you guys next time.